Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm your host and head witch, Miss Solaris BlueRaven at the helm this evening. And I want to give a shout-out to everybody at Revolution Radio, staff, producers, listeners, chat room, and thank everyone for tuning in tonight. We are 100% listener-supported, so if you like what you're hearing, please click on the donate button. We appreciate your support, and thank you for any contribution you can make to this excellent station. And, of course, everyone knows by now that Michael Hemmingson is no longer with us. He's transferred out and is on his way to another universe, and he will be missed. First time I ever encountered Michael Hemmingson was at the Super Soldier Summit, and he actually let me borrow his computer to broadcast my show for Revolution Radio, and so it's really a loss, and I don't know what else to say. Hope everybody sends their love and prayers, and like I said, he's in a good place. So, all right, let's see here. There's some noise in the background there. I think you're going to have to mute whoever you are. You are listening to Studio A. And my special guest this evening is Steve Colbern. And Steve Colbern is a chemist, materials scientist with 20 years of industrial experience. He is currently working in the area of carbon nanotubes. Colbern has recently analyzed several alleged alien implants that Dr. Roger Leir has removed from his patients and has uncovered startling findings. Please welcome Steve to the show this evening. Steve, how you doing?
Doing great, Solaris. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just plugging along in the illusion here. So it's great to have you on board, and thank you for being on tonight. Yeah, so it's good to hear your voice, too. And let's talk about where you were last weekend. I know you were doing some work with Roger Leir, Dr. Leir, and you also were on a panel of experts. Is that correct?
Yeah, the weekend before last, we did a removal surgery and took another device out of a man's leg. Yeah, that was really interesting.
Okay.
And the following Monday, we went to Steel Labs to examine the object under scanning electron microscopy and EDX, and we got some good data out of that, and then the following weekend, that was on the panel that you're talking about.
Excellent. So can you elaborate a little bit on the surgical removal of the implant and what that entailed?
Yeah, somebody that Rick Shaw, the developer of the Watcher series, knew. They were just talking one day, and he said, he was going to do a special on Watcher's 8 about the implant removals. And this guy said, well, I'm an abductee and I've got an implant. And he didn't really believe him at first, but he took him down to Dr. Leir, and they got the area of concern x-rayed, and sure enough, there was an object there. So he decided to pay for removal surgery, and we removed the object, and it turned out to be something very similar to the object from surgery number 15. It was a metallic object about 5 millimeters long, and 1 millimeter in diameter, and had the same kind of biological type coating on the outside, mostly iron, and there was some evidence for carbon nanotubes. I did Raman spectroscopy on the object to reveal the probable presence of carbon nanotubes. And it also has, we saw at Steel Labs that it had the 10 micron wide carbon nanotube bundles, wires that look like the main electrical connections to the device. Very interesting.
Yeah, it does sound interesting. So does it appear that it's more of maybe a black budget technology or something off-world, would you say?
Well, we believe they're alien because the isotopic ratios of selected elements in the metallic portions of the samples have turned out to be non-terrestrial. So unless the Black Project people are using off-planet material, they're probably alien in origin, but we can't rule out them being black budget devices at this point. But they're definitely manufactured nanotechnological devices that look like they're some sort of perfected technology. Carbon nanotube electronics.
Right. So what do you think that these implants do? I mean, do they have a function?
We're just speculating on the function at this point, but Dr. Kuhns thought that the John Smith object from surgery number 15 was a listening device, among other things. I believe that they're devices that monitor the physiological state of the subject, body temperature, blood glucose levels, blood pressure, that sort of thing as well. And there are other ones that are put in the brain that I think monitor the subject's sensory information. In other words, the aliens can, or whoever puts them in, can see what they see and hear what they hear in real time.
Exactly. And of course, everybody who doesn't know, Steve Colbern was actually the one who did my implant analysis scan for my documentary, either remote disclosure or covert technology. So, and of course, I understand that very, very well insofar as how the brain and those devices work. So, really interesting. Insofar as the man with the, there's some background noise there. I don't know. It must be from a computer in the background. But anyways, I was going to ask you about the man who had the implant removed from his leg. So, is that correct?
Yeah, it was from an area just below the knee, in the guy's right leg.
It seems to me like there are a lot of implants on the legs. Is that just an exaggeration, or?
No, not really. The legs, thighs, feet, toes, brain, the back of the neck, and above the skull and below the scalp, above each ear are common places for implants.
Mm-hmm. And how did this guy find out how he had the implant? Did you scan him?
Yeah, I scanned him. The area was positive for with a stud finder. The metal in it was enough to set off the stud finder. And he said that he had subconscious recall of an abduction where they put an implant in him, and so that's how he said he knew, and that was confirmed by X-ray, and we removed the object, and we're going to continue to study it. Next step is to send part of the material off to a lab for ICP-MS analysis and confirm get the isotopic ratio analysis and trace element analysis.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them turn out to have meteoric iron in them.
Right.
The metal in the John Smith object from surgery number 15 was almost 100% meteoric iron.
Mm-hmm. That's really, really interesting to me, all of this, obviously because I have all these things embedded in my own structure, so there's a real resonance. You said he did have recall of being inducted, I guess, or tagged with this sort of thing. When he removed the surgery, did Dr. Leir remove it?
No, Dr. Matriciano, who works with Dr. Leir on these surgeries, removed it. Dr. Leir is only authorized to operate on the feet since he's a podiatrist, but Dr. Matriciano is a general surgeon, and he ends up removing most of them.
Okay. And so who has the implant now? Where is it right now?
I've got it in my possession. We went over to Steel Labs, and I dissected off the tissue capsule that was around it. It was this tough epithelial tissue layer, and I gave that to Dr. Leir for pathology lab analysis. Most of these objects, or all of the objects so far, have produced no inflammatory response by the body, which is incredible. I mean, any object inserted into the body, it produces some sort of inflammatory or immune response, and these objects are exceptions. So they're using some sort of technology to make it compatible with the body, and the technology appears to be either a tough layer of epithelial tissue that grows around it, or this gray, tough membrane that seems to be self-assembled out of the blood plasma of the subject.
Right.
And either way, it produces no immune response, and the objects are connected to the nervous system of the subject via proprioceptor nerves that grow into the objects after they're inserted. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they sort of integrate in. Is there any knowing, insofar as how long this implant was in his body?
He said it had been there a long time, since he was a kid.
Wow, so that is a long time. That's really interesting. Yeah, so...
It felt somewhat different after it was removed, too. I asked him if he felt any different, and he said he did feel subtly different. He couldn't really describe it very well, though.
Did he say he felt better or worse?
Perhaps slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
Was the impression I got.
Yeah, I would think so. All in all, I would say so. So does it seem like there's an increase insofar as people being implanted? It seems to me like all of a sudden there are a lot of people that have been contactees who have implants. What's your take on that?
I'm not sure if there's an increase in the rate of implantation, but there's certainly an increase in UFO sightings and reported abductions in general. Mm-hmm. Most of the implants we've seen have been in the patient for a long time, so it's really hard to say if there's an increase in actual implants being inserted at this point. I have not run across too many people saying I just had an implant, inserted recently, but that's not to say that might not be the case. I mean, a lot of people might not notice if they've had an implant inserted because they erase the abductee's memories most of the time. Mm-hmm.
Right, they have the screen memories too. That's very, very true. And I guess if they get implanted as children, they just grow up with these implants, and eventually they discover them. So more and more people are starting to notice that they've had these type of implants. Now, a lot of these implants are physical, like the ones you guys are surgically removing, and there are others like myself. I mean, I have signal anomalies too. How many people have you scanned that have signal anomalies? Or let me ask you this. We've talked about, in the past, radio frequency transmissions and some of the, I think it was Dr. Kuntz actually who associated some of these signals with air traffic control and other intelligence divisions.
Yeah, some of the radio signals that were given off are satellite or aeronautical communication frequencies, and some of them are ELF frequencies that might affect the brain. That might be useful in mind control.
Right.
And there's often a gigahertz range frequency being given off too that might be the main communication frequency. And there's also certain megahertz range frequencies given off by these things that Dr. Kuntz said were frequencies that could self-power the device by coupling of phonon modes in the metal with this frequency. Evidently, in his research, coupling of metal phonon modes with certain resonant frequencies in the megahertz range that's different for each metal can give off, release energy from the zero-point field and self-power the object, or in theory that's possible.
I totally agree with that, with a zero-point transmission. Did you say photon? Is that what you were talking about?
Phonon.
Phonon, okay.
Sound waves in the metal.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Sound is quantized on the quantum level inside the metal.
Yeah, I miss Dr. Kuntz. I'm hoping he'll get back over here on my show as soon as he's starting to feel better. So. Yeah,
that was fascinating when he relayed that information to me. That would be an ideal way to self-power a very small device like this if you could perfect the technology.
Totally. Well, I think it's safe to be, I think it's safe to say that these things are being deployed and they're being used on people, and that, whether it's covert intelligence departments or extraterrestrial off-world technology, I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of the black budget, my labs, and then it's a combination of off-world technology as well. So we're dealing with something that hopefully is being used for good, but from my personal experience, it hasn't been. So I wonder what your impression is on that.
I think the aliens are distributing some of their technology to the Black Project people, probably as payment for being able to abduct people down here. And I think most of these devices are inserted by the aliens. So as far as being used for good, I think the aliens are pretty much using it for their own purposes. And I think it's probably self-evident that any technology that gets into the hands of our government is going to be used mostly for bad. Given their past track record, I'm not sure what's nice for, but just spying on if they were implanting, if the government were implanting these things in people on a routine basis, it would just be used to spy on people and violate privacy. Well, I think that's already being deployed. It's basically the society in general is getting calibrated for all this. So he's got everything, conditioned right now to a point where they can easily start inserting all of this technology into everyone's bodies, and then they can start remote control. I was just saying today that I think what the government really wants long term is to be able to monitor everybody's movements in real time, and what better way to do that than by implants that might be tracked by satellite. Yep, absolutely. Well, I've had that for 10 years now, insofar as what's happened to me. But I can say that that's definitely part of the agenda, without a doubt. But then you have to ask yourself, I don't think anybody's life is that interesting. So it tells me that we obviously have something that they're looking for. I don't think it's about just control and manipulation. My take is that we are star beings, and I've mentioned this before, that we are not, our ancestry is off-world, and that we start evolving and ascending onto higher levels of consciousness where we start developing more technological skills and psychic abilities and this and that. So, of course, we're going to get tagged to some degree insofar as watching and observing the evolution. And, of course, contactees are tracked by government. So all of this kind of integrates in insofar as what their agenda is, including. But I will tell you, just from my personal experience, and you know this, I know the control manipulation factor is horrific in that if we don't get a grip on this, it's going to destroy this civilization as we know it. Yeah, it's already destroyed any semblance of constitutional government and freedom in this country, and they want to just have an open-ended agenda to create total tyranny, apparently, and it's distressing to hear that anybody is for this, but apparently there's large numbers of people in this country that don't care, that just will give up their freedom for some perceived security, and it's all these problems, terrorism, and all this sort of thing are being created by our government anyway. It's artificial. Right. It's all one big false reality. It's one big false matrix, as we all know. We're all preaching to the choir right now because everybody listening is usually aware of that. But it's very true. And unless you break orbit with that whole cycle,
You just get consumed into that false reality, of course. But, waking up into seeing what's happening here and really just approaching it on a technological level. I hear so many times that, anytime someone's being electronically harassed or any type of a technological interference, it's, they're schizophrenic or they're this and they're that. Absolutely not. People have to educate themselves insofar as understanding technology. Once you start understanding that the technology exists, whether it's off-world technology or covert technology, then you're able to understand what's going on with society right now. Now, obviously, I can prove the technological implantation that I had starting back in 2004, and that's documented, and a lot of other people can as well. So this isn't some kind of a joke. I mean, this is something that we have to take seriously, and the reason that I address it with a serious passion is because I know what it can do on a negative level. So, and obviously, you've seen the positives and the negatives yourself. Now, you also have had an implant removed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was actually patient number 15. I called myself John Smith at the time because I don't like going on stage saying I'm an abductee, or contactee. But yeah, I've had an implant removed. That's how I met Dr. Leir. He works only a few blocks from where I work, and the aliens put an implant in my toe in February 28th, 2008, and I went over and saw Dr. Leir a couple of months later. And he thought it was an interesting case and wanted to remove the object, so I had it removed in September of 2008.
Mm-hmm. And you've noticed a difference? I mean, how did you feel energetically after that was removed?
I felt like I didn't feel any different as far as my health, but people were saying that I didn't look well when I had the object, and I just felt subtly different when it was removed, like a kind of a governor had been removed from my thoughts or something like that. It's really hard to describe.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I can believe that, actually. It reminds me of Whitley Strieber. Now, when they tried to remove his, it had intelligent control, and it wasn't allowing for the surgery to continue. Is that correct?
His was a moving object.
Right.
Mine was stationary, and his was one that would move under the skin. He said it hurt like hell when it would move. It was in his earlobe, and it moved away from the surgeon that was trying to remove it, and the guy got just a little piece of it. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen that piece, but the guy put it under a microscope and said it had like cilia on it that apparently allowed it to move under the skin. We have not been able to remove one of the moving objects yet and analyze it, but I've heard from several other people that these objects are, that type is fairly common, but for obvious reasons are more difficult to remove.
Right. After what I've experienced, I'm not convinced that these things are healthy at all. I've said this before. I feel like it's taken half of my life force away, insofar as I'll probably wouldn't live as long as I normally would because of what has happened to me. I mean, that's just my own impression. Now, this could be different for somebody else. But I do know it can enhance certain things, but it also burns you out quick, too. It's burning your chi. It's burning your life force. And I've noticed that. I mean, I don't look as healthy as I used to at all. Not at all. So, yeah. And so this is why I think it's a very serious issue, and it needs to be addressed, because you have people who are illegally, whether they're extraterrestrials or a covert intelligence program, illegally tagging individuals and manipulating them one way or another to a point where they're making them sick, or they're ruining their lives and this and that. So it's a big mix of things that's happening out here right now, and you have to really use discernment insofar as which division is really doing it. But I think it's a combination of both. And when you talk about extraterrestrials, what species are you referring to?
The Greys. This was definitely the Greys that did this to me. I remember the incident quite well, where they inserted it after being undergoing regressive hypnosis by Yvonne Smith, and it was I remembered it pretty well. And they put the object in saying it was a physiological monitoring device, and I think Dr. Kuntz is probably right in that it was probably a listening device as well. But they didn't say anything about it being having any other functions, but who knows? I want to say that the government is also scared to death of contactees in general. I mean, they think, and probably with some justification, that the aliens might be able to push a button someplace and just totally make the abductees do whatever they want them to do, like a fifth column or something like that, and that's the way they consider us.
Well, I can see the door swinging both ways. I mean, what you have is some kind of a mind control, whether it's through an off-world intelligence or the covert intelligence department. So you're dealing with somebody trying to control and manipulate someone else. So I think it's a war zone. It's kind of like they're fighting over who gets control over someone's psyche at this point. And the best thing I can recommend is for people to pay attention to that and just trust their higher selves and don't allow themselves to be brainwashed or controlled.
I think the government's kind of behind the eight ball too, though, because I know that a lot of government employees and probably a lot of politicians too have been abducted and implanted by the aliens. So they probably have a great deal of knowledge of what goes on behind top secret circles, and also could control these people if need be.
Yeah, it seems that way. Well, it seems like they're definitely being controlled and manipulated by something. And I would say just about everybody, whether it's, it doesn't have to be hardcore mind control, but they're definitely being influenced to some extent. And you can pretty much tell by how people function from day to day, if they're irrational, if they're thinking, if they're, just being logical and spiritual. You can tell. I certainly can, and I'm sure you can as well, as far as that goes. I was going to ask you about something. Let's see here. This is very interesting. You guys, I'm a little off tonight because of the Michael Hemmingson thing, so I apologize. I've been in a different space, so I'm just trying to recalibrate here. So bear with me while I try to conduct an interview. But sure. It's been a rough night, rough day actually. So
did you just die today, or what?
Pardon me?
Did you just die today?
No, we found out today. So it's just been when you find out things like that, it just shifts you in another dimension. That's all I can say about it. I don't want to go on and on. We've been talking about it, but it's sad. It really is. It's a loss. Whenever you miss people, I hate saying goodbye to people. I know they're going to another destination that's better and more ascended, but still, it's not easy. I deal with that a lot. People seem to be transferring out right and left. So, but anyways, I do know there are various frequencies one can work with to overlay the technology itself. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but my main concern, and I talked about this before, is the negative health effects from a long-term implantation. Is there anything you know of that can assist in healing the body, or perhaps besides physical surgery, is there anything you know of that has been deployed insofar as helping or assisting with people with implants?
Well, the aliens actually tell a lot of contactees to take a lot of vitamins and antioxidants. So
I do that.
Presumably that will heal some of the damage or trauma caused by some of the abductions. I know we're exposed to a lot of radiation on these experiences. They told me that too, and that's part of the reason for taking the vitamins and herbs and antioxidants.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And a lot of experiencers have night blindness due to vitamin A deficiency. So Dr. Leir has hypothesized that these implants deplete the body of vitamin A. So taking vitamin A and beta carotene might help. That's
very interesting.
Yeah. And a lot of abductees also crave salt. So perhaps more sodium, more minerals, might do something positive.
Something along the lines of that.
Our physiology is somewhat different than people that are not contactees, in my opinion.
Right.
We need to do more research, but maybe salt is bad for normal people, but I don't think it's bad for us. So
no.
More salt or more minerals in general, I think
right.
would help.
I used to use a lot of float tanks when I was inducted. When I first got tagged, and I was being inundated with the communication system, and I really was trying to find some inner peace. I would actually go into the float tanks. And of course, that's a solution, salt water and whatever else they use in there. But it's very, very interesting because it seemed to help quite a bit. I mean, I had a clear communication, but it certainly helps my body insofar as trying to assist in healing.
Bathing in a hot spring or mineral spring might help. By the same token, I mean, if you're bathing in a mineral-rich solution, a lot of the minerals that your body needs are absorbed through the skin.
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. Are you still working with the abductee groups?
Yeah.
Okay, so is that once a month still?
Yeah, it's once a month.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got one coming up on the 26th.
Yeah, I think that's very important that people have some place to go. And of course, this whole time this is going on, there's no talk about it on mainstream. I mean, and of course they have the circus, and you'll see all these sci-fi channels coming out with stories and this and that, and it's all one big game. Let's hunt the alien DNA, or let's hunt this. And I'm sorry, but when you go through a traumatic event with such as what I went through, or people like me, it's not a joke, and you really have to take it seriously, and you have to just look at it on a technological level. And I don't think people are doing that. I think they're just making it into some kind of a show. And to me, that's very insulting. So I'm hoping that we can turn this around with a more hardcore approach. And I like the fact that you and Dr. Leir have been working very, very hard on all of this. I know you've been doing a lot of work on this. Actually, you've been on the front lines, and now everybody's trying to jump on the bandwagon from what I've seen.
Oh, really?
Well, I won't mention any names, but from what I've seen, I know that you have actually been out there doing the implant analysis scans, and you've been diligently working on this. And there are others that are not as good who are kind of just jumping along for the ride. So I'm not going to mention their name on here, but I'll tell you point blank. I know who the people are who are sincere and trustworthy versus the other ones who are just in it for a fast buck or just 20 minutes of fame. So. Yeah,
I just wondered because Dr. Leir and I are the only ones I know of that are doing any analysis of implants.
I'll tell you off air.
What's that?
I said I'll tell you off air on that one.
All right, just here.
Yeah. But it's true. I mean, I give you guys a lot of respect for that, and honestly, like I said, I'd like to see more and more of this information out there. The one thing that I'm working out on my end is to try and work with the frequencies and shifting the dynamic of what they've done with the implants because they're signal anomalies. And I think we talked a little bit about the one that was a deep space signal. So I think you mentioned that earlier. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're dealing with a lot of different types of communication systems and signal anomalies. And, of course, I have a signal anomaly that I've had for 10 years now. And I can't get rid of this thing. It's not going to go unless I do something drastic, and I'm not going to do that. So,
yeah, we even tried the graphite cloth to try to
I've tried everything.
filter it out.
Right. You know that. You sent me the graphite.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was like, oh, no, nothing's working. But it doesn't.
I didn't think it was going to work. I thought it was worth a try, though.
No, it is. I'm like the mad scientist, so I'll work it out. Believe me, I'm figuring things out pretty quick. So
scalar waves penetrate most everything. They're like gravity waves. So,
right. Yeah, and it's also a combination. Yeah.
Say again?
I said it's a combination too. It's not just the scalar waves. I figured that out too. Everybody's just they're just kind of focusing on the scalar. It's more than that. But
graphite cloth should stop the transverse component of whatever you're experiencing.
Yeah, I wish. Well, I think I need a magneto helmet. That's what I think I need. I need a nice customized helmet, where I can just kind of redirect some things. But anyway, that's getting on another tangent here. But I was going to talk a little bit about, I have a holistic healing background, and I find it interesting because, we have the etheric implants, which act as stabilizers as the body mutates to a higher level of light body design. If you're into spirituality or ascension, you understand what I'm talking about. So these are normal. I mean, those are the normal kind of implants that dissolve with higher consciousness and have nothing to do with covert tactical implantation at all. So then you've got this arena where you've got the physical implantation where, they're basically being used to control, monitor, manipulate, or alter somebody in some way. And I would say, for the most part, it's not a positive, but more like a transhumanism agenda. And I was wondering what your take is on the transhumanism.
Yeah, I think they want to. They're one of their goals is to improve the human race and improve and control. Let's say they want people to be less aggressive, more intelligent, more caring about the planet.
So you think they want to use it for good?
In some ways. I mean, they want people to be a certain way to benefit themselves and keep us from destroying the planet. But I mean, in some sense, it's for good, yes.
Okay, because sometimes when I look at the transhumanism, I see it as the opposite. I see it more like an induction to a slave race, that they do want people modified, but basically they want to be the god, and they want to create everybody and modify them their way, their version of what they think they should be. Now, coming from the psychotronic...
I guess you could say that about just about everybody. I think I have more respect for the aliens than I do our government. Our government's really, negative and aggressive about wanting to enslave everything.
I think that's true, too. I have more of a connection to off-world intelligence, shall we say. But I think that problem we have on this planet, whether it's a government or a religion or whatever it is, it's always about control and manipulation, and it's always about a detachment from source. Because if they were connected to the universe, if they were connected to source, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And they wouldn't have a need to misuse the technology. Only people who are disconnected from spirit would want to do such a thing, in my opinion. And after, like I said, I've come from the side where I've been under a handler to a point where they wanted to control and manipulate me. I understand their tactics, and it's not about anything but control, manipulation, and brainwashing. So,
well, I guess the difference is that the aliens actually have an agenda that's somewhat good, that will do some good. The government just has an agenda that's more and more control and manipulation just for control and manipulation's sake.
Yeah, I agree.
And I say only somebody that had no morals or spirituality whatsoever would subscribe to such a philosophy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really do. And so far as the implants go, have you noticed any specific sex associated with the implantation? Is it more male or female, or?
No, it's about half and half, but I have noticed that what I call frequent flyer or class 2 abductees, ones that are contacted frequently, there are more women than men, from what I've seen so far anyway.
That's really interesting. Or maybe the men have a block. They seem to be, more rational on some level.
Maybe I'm one of the few class 2 abductees that I'm aware of. That's male.
That's really interesting. Is Dr. Leir? He's not a contactee, is he?
Yeah, I'd say he is.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to talk about that too much, but he's been picked up a few times.
I think we all have.
Just by reading his book, you can tell that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we all have. I think you're a frequent flyer as well.
Yeah. Oh, I know I am. The funny thing is, I'm pretty sure I was doing that before I was tagged with the covert program. So that's what I'm getting more and more clarity insofar as my own celestial design versus them. But they hate the fact that what they try to do is derail you, and they want a version of you that they can control and manipulate. And what I am, they don't like that version at all. So, but that's the covert areas. But they'll get over that soon enough, I guess. But very, very interesting information here. And for people who want to get a hold of you, what's your website, and how would they do that?
My website is www.alienevidenceinc.webs.com.
Okay.
And I've got 3 papers on implants that I've analyzed on the site.
Excellent.
And that's implants 15 and 16 from, number 15 was from my toe, and number 16 was from Mr. Ron Noel's wrist. That was removed in 2009, and that was the last surgery after the one we just did a couple of weeks ago.
Interesting.
And I also have a paper on an unusual implant made of silica and alumina microfibers from patient Alice Levy. That was one of the first implant removals that Dr. Leir did back in 95 or 96.
Do all of these implants look alike?
No, they're different models. The one from Alice Levy's leg was one of a kind. We haven't seen one like it since then. And it was ceramic fibers, mostly aluminum and silica. And there was one biological one that Dr. Leir removed from below the skin in somebody's arm that moved around. And there's the moving cylindrical metal ones like in Whitley's ear. And
right.
There's the more or less standard cylindrical ones that are about 5 millimeters long, covered by either the gray membrane or epithelial tissue, and we've seen like 6 or 7 of those so far. And there's one other type that's a T-shaped object that's in other ways similar to the cylindrical kind.
Where do you store all these implants?
I probably shouldn't say over the air.
Okay, no, that's all right. I was just curious, but you have control, not a department.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're safe where they are.
Okay. I was going to say, did you have any? Did you ever get any interference from government at all?
No. I only had one problem with government. Nobody's tried to stop our research or anything, but I did have a threat one time from somebody that works for NASA. What happened was Whitley Strieber introduced me to this guy. I probably shouldn't say his name over the air, but he's a high-up guy in NASA that is a trajectory man for NASA and has made a name for himself making trajectories for spacecraft that use a lot less energy to go to the planets and the moon. And in any event, this guy regaled me with stories about how he'd seen UFOs and aliens, and appeared to be pumping me for information. And we eventually had a falling out when I said some positive things about private aerospace efforts. And boy, this guy got pretty upset. And I never expected to hear from him again. And then back in 2009, I was invited to the X conference and to tell my story, and we were going to exhibit the results of the analysis of my implant as well. And I got sick with one of my cluster headaches and couldn't go to the conference. And about 3 days after the conference, Dr. Leir and a colleague of mine presented the implant results, but I didn't get to go talk about how the implant was put in. But 3 days after the conference, this guy calls back, and I was really surprised to hear from him. And I asked him what he wanted, and he said, well, it's a good thing you didn't go to that conference. I'm going, why? He goes, your life would have been in danger if you went there. And I go, well, why is that? I go, I wasn't aware these conferences were that dangerous. And he goes, yeah, there's a lot of crazies out there. And, you know, it was obviously a thinly veiled threat. The message seemed to be that it's okay to talk about implant analysis or to talk about experiences, but they don't want credible people that have had both experiences and have physical evidence. I'm talking about the two together.
Right. They don't want the proof out there, but you know, I think I think the veil is coming down. That's my take, anyways. I think that they have no choice because there are so many of us now that have proof of what's happening. That how can they, you know, they can't kill everybody. You know.
Yeah, well, the fact that we're allowed to operate is proof that the rules have been relaxed somewhat. I mean, and I think they used to kill people for doing research like this back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, they do. So hopefully they won't be doing any weirdness like that. But yeah, it's a strange world we live in, I'll tell you that much. You know, I was thinking about the black-eyed children and the black oil. Does that have any connection to your research at all?
No, I'm not sure what the black-eyed children are. Some people thought they were hybrids at first, but I kind of doubt it. I mean, people say that they sense evil from the black-eyed children, so...
Ominous kind of energy, yeah.
It could be some kind of demonic thing, or I'm not sure what the deal is, but I don't think that they're necessarily alien-related. Right,
you don't think there's a connection there at all? Okay. You know, I know that they talk about it being possibly interdimensional, but I mean, you know, who knows? I've never encountered one, but I have heard of the black oil, too. So, I mean, everything has consciousness when you look at it. So, and there are so many different things out there in between the spaces of the illusion of time. I mean, we have a busy highway, a multidimensional highway that we can pierce once in a while. So who knows what people are pulling in through their psyches, you know?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things out there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What year was your first abduction experience?
Well, I think it was before day one. I have reason to believe my mom was abducted while she was pregnant with me.
Wow.
The first one I remember was when I was 5 years old. I remember getting up right before sunrise, and the sky was just starting to get light, and seeing a small scout craft type UFO hovering over my parents' house, looking out my bedroom window. Then I blacked out and woke up about 7 o'clock in the morning. The sun was up, and I had blood all down the front of me, and I had a memory of somebody shoving something up my nose.
Wow.
And soon after that, I developed an obsession with anything to do with space.
That's very interesting. What state were you living in at the time?
California, Oxnard, California. And when my son was 5, the same thing happened to him. He apparently had, I get a feeling like a restless feeling, like when they're coming that night. It was kind of a feeling of anxiety, and I got that feeling really strong, and I knew they were coming for him, and I stayed up as late as I could, and then finally passed out about 3:30 in the morning, and then woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning. My wife was having some kind of a problem that night, and woke up and checked on my son, and he had blood all down the front of him, and the blood was situated in such a way that it looked like he was not in bed when it happened. And then he started developing an obsession with anything to do with space in the next few days after that.
That's really interesting. Does your mother ever have any recall of being abducted?
She says she doesn't, but she says that when I was growing up, she used to see balls of green light in the house a lot, and recently she started seeing them again. Yeah,
that's kind of a sign, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something's up.
Orbs.
Kind of an esoteric household, for sure. That's really interesting. So for some people who think they might be contactees or abductees, what are some good giveaways or signs that they could be possibly an abductee?
Dreams about aliens or UFOs, fear of doctors or needles, seeing lights like little laser beams in your bedroom at night, or lights that seem to come from nowhere, and you put your hand in front of it, there's no shadow. strange sounds like footsteps on the roof or knocking on the wall at night that there's no good explanation for it. I don't know if many people have had this, but I had the house shake one time for 15 minutes, pretty violently actually, and there was no earthquake that day, so I think that would be a giveaway.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Nobody's had that happen. I really thought with that incident they were trying to convince my wife this was real.
Yeah, possibly trying to get somebody's attention, huh? So what about any extra abilities, any extra sensitivity, psychic ability, telepathy?
Yeah, absolutely. Contactees almost to a person have greatly increased psychic abilities over normal people. And we're usually highly intelligent, maybe physically stronger than normal. More intuitive, sensitive, have a cosmic awareness, or a lot better with animals than most people. Get along with animals better than most people.
Makes sense. That's very, very interesting. Do magnets have any effect on these implants?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
The implants are highly magnetic most of the time. So if you could demagnetize them somehow with a demagnetizing coil, I don't know if that would work or not. But
that's interesting.
If you could, it might disrupt their function. Dr. Kuhn thought the magnetic field might be necessary for their functioning.
That's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Is Dr. Kuhn still doing research on this?
As far as I know, he had a stroke and he was kind of out of it for a while.
Yeah, I've been trying to get him on my show. He said he'd come on as soon as he starts feeling better, and he's a sweet guy. I really like him.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Yeah, I can't say good things enough about him, and your work too. I mean, it's just awesome. So, insofar as I think I talked about the contactee and the abductees. Now, you're saying not all of them have implants, right? Like some people can be contactees and never get an implant. Is that correct?
Yeah, people that I call class 1 abductees that are just basically experimental subjects for the aliens, or they just take samples from them. A lot of them probably have no implants, or maybe just have one small one for tracking or monitoring to a limited degree. Class 2 abductees have the brain implants, and there's usually one in the back of the neck that I think functions to allow the aliens to shut the person off if they misbehave too much. And there's usually 2 small ones above each ear, above the skull and below the scalp, and that's kind of the classic pattern. And sometimes there'll be ones in the extremities as well. I even know one guy, this is pretty uncommon, but I even know one guy that's got a tremendous amount of alien activity that lives up in Lake Isabella that has one in his chest cavity, and a magnet actually sticks to his chest at that location.
That's interesting. Wow, I should probably see if I can get some magnets to stick to me, huh? Yeah, I have quite a few. I mean, I have that one that's close to my chest that you measured. That one. They just don't shut off. I mean, I know that there is talk of them switching on and off, and I think you've mentioned that before. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think they're always on as far as gathering information, but they're not always transmitting radio signals. We've proven that conclusively through the last 2 tests. Right.
So somehow they get, what happens then at that point? If they're not switched off, they're not transmitting.
I think they may burst transmit some of the information. Either that or if they are continuously transmitting, then they have one frequency we can't detect. But they're only transmitting on wave bands that we can detect intermittently.
Okay, and can you talk about the wave bands?
On the John Smith implant, the one that came out of my toe, the wave bands were 8 hertz. That's a ultra low, extremely low frequency band that may have something to do with mind control, because the brain operates on those frequencies. And there was, I think 158 megahertz was one of them, and that turned out to be an aeronautical or satellite communication band frequency. And the third higher frequency was 2.8 gigahertz. And that's slightly higher than the frequency that microwave ovens use. And that's kind of in the radar range. Right. That's very, very interesting. That's probably where most of the information is transmitted, I would think.
Yeah, so if we were to piggyback off of that with a higher frequency transmission, we could probably disrupt those, huh?
Hard to say.
Yeah. So it's not a fail-safe system. I'm always looking for a way.
If you wanted to disrupt it, I think that demagnetizing it would be your best bet, because the EM phonon interaction that these things probably depend on to self-power, that interaction is dependent on there being a magnetic field present. So.
Yeah, that makes sense too. But we are electromagnetic, as we've talked about too. Insofar as, like, say, if somebody has like what I have, you have things that are kind of integrated in. It's more difficult to disengage something like that because it's part of me now. So can't really.
Well, these brain implants are the same way. I mean, the aliens told me early on that that these things integrate into the nervous system and become part of the system, and it could be fatal to try to remove them. Yeah,
that's kind of the impression I've been getting. That's one of the reasons I really didn't pursue a lot of purge, but I knew it was integrated in anyway. So, I mean, I've talked to the developer of some of this technology too. I mean, we're talking, covert technology versus the extraterrestrial, but I am convinced, like you have mentioned before, that it's a mix between covert technology and extraterrestrial also. So you're dealing with both.
Yeah.
But,
well, even the ones that are outside the brain, I think, could be integrated to a larger extent than I first thought, because the guy from surgery number 16, Ron Noel, he actually fell into a deep depression after the object was removed that lasted for weeks. I was kind of worried about him for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was as a direct result of having the object removed. At least that's the impression I got.
Yeah, I can imagine that. You need to fill that space with something on a higher frequency, higher consciousness level. Well, it's almost like a parasitic relationship, You've got something there that's kind of feeding off of the life force and integrated in. And I feel like I have a parasite. I mean, but, I've calibrated quite a bit.
I don't know if it's parasitic or so much as just an add-on that wants to change you into something other than what you were born to be.
Right. Well, I think that's part of it. It's one thing to enhance somebody for the better, but it's another thing to control, manipulate, and destroy, and break down somebody, and definitely try to disconnect them from spirit. Like I said, from what I've experienced, I think they're trying to divert consciousness and control the collective to a point where they're controlling the masses, and it's not for the highest good of our evolution.
The Greys are a hive mind, so they may want the same thing for us, but maybe it's neither here nor there, but I've always felt like my emotions are not the same as most people's. Yeah, I don't know if that's a result of the implants or something else that they've done, or maybe just a coincidence. I don't know, but
possible.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, I know from where I've come, I used to be highly, highly empathic. So empathic that I had friends who were like, "I wish you weren't so sensitive and so psychic," because I would just pick up on everyone and everything always. And then, of course, after my induction, that changed. And then all of a sudden, it was like I had this suit on. I can't explain it, but it was like I had an entire suit, like a bodysuit on all the time, where I was insulated, but also to a point where I couldn't feel the way I used to. I still can't. I don't have that kind of empathy anymore. I mean, I do care. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the way it used to be at all. It's completely different now. I'm completely modified, except I'm still here. I'm still me. But there's things that are not me. Insofar as what they did with the technological stuff, and it's integrated. So I have to deal with that, and that's what I did. I just, we have the documentary out, and thank you for assisting me with that. So, I mean, that's hardcore, and people who don't look into these things and don't understand what we're talking about, I suggest you get up to speed and start really understanding this technology, man, because I've been dealing with it for 10 years. There are people who have been, implanted as children, I'm sure, and all sorts of other things. So, and I think right now it's, everybody's really big on the UFOs. Oh, it's like a real big thing. And I think that's because it's in your face. I mean, we have no choice but to look into that mirror and see what's been going on for, like, how many decades have they been lying to us about what's been going on with all these UFO cases,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the aliens have loved being able to pursue their agenda in secret without anybody knowing about it.
Oh, absolutely. I agree.
I don't know. I just assume live with them sometimes.
Oh yeah. Well, you and I both. Off-world sounds better. We're heading for a break, everybody. We'll be right back. Ravenstar's Witching Hour. My special guest, Steve Colbern. Stay tuned.